In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the air dam, also sometimes known as the valence, on this Ford F-150. Let's get started. Now let's disconnect the fog light bulbs first, get those out of the way. The bulb wiring harness obviously leads back into the cab, so I want to get this unplugged. If you turn the wheel in the opposite direction of where you're working, it should clear some space here for you, or you could just leave it as is. Most of the time you can still reach in here. Regardless, reach in, and to disconnect it, you're going to have to pry back on these two tabs. Once they unhook, pull down on the wiring harness and do the same to the other side. Now underneath the vehicle from behind the front bumper, you'll see this shield here. Some vehicles might have it, some might not, but I have it here, so I have to disconnect it off of the bumper side. It has 3 large push clips here. So let's get a trim tool and pop these off. All right, get this out of the way. This exposes the brackets that we're after. What I will attempt to do now is unbolt the 10mm bolts that hold this larger one onto the bumper itself. So there are 2 over here, a couple more on the other side of the frame rail, and of course we're gonna have to do the same to the other bumper bracket on the passenger side. We're working on the driver's side here. Let's get this top one out of here. Once again, 10mm socket. And the bottom. And on the other side of this frame rail, you'll see this other 10mm bolt at the top right there. So let's get this one out also. And on the bottom of the other side of this frame rail, you'll see the lower 10mm bolt. Don't confuse it for these. These hold on to fog light assembly, so just take out this one that is on the bracket that comes from the top. Take this entire bracket off and set it aside safely. This is side specific. And now we'll do the same thing to the other side of the vehicle. And here's the passenger side, 4 bolts. Yeah, that happens. We'll have to fix that. Follow that bracket up and you'll see that 10mm bolt up there. And the lower bolt on the other side of the frame rail. And last one, all the way at the top here. Hold the bumper in place so it doesn't fall off. At this point, carefully grab the bumper, tilt it forward. It has to slide from underneath this top piece and pull it away. When it comes time to removing the air dam or valence, however you want to call it, you don't have to remove the fog lights, if you have fog lights that is. But the more difficult part is going to be the 2 bolts that are underneath the fog light assemblies right here underneath this bracket. There's one here and one symmetrical on the other side. You can fit a wrench or a ratchet in there, no problem. So I'm not going to take the fog light assemblies out. If you want to, you can. It's just 3 10mm bolts. But then you have to deal with realigning them or aiming them. And if you can avoid that, why not? So having said that, there are a bunch of 8mm bolts that go all the way across. So I'm going to start at one side and work my way to the other. This one back here that you can just barely see is the one that is going to require either a shallow socket and a ratchet or an 8mm wrench. If you have a long wrench with some leverage, that'll be the best for getting this out of here. There we go. There it is. Next, we actually have to take off these bumper pads so that we can free up the air dam that's underneath it. This piece kind of goes in and behind the bumper pads. That's what these are called, just the rectangular looking pieces on the outside of the bumper cover. So I'm going to try and pry these out, or pry the pad out as I'm squeezing on these clips. There we go. All right, with this removed, we can now do the same for this. There we go. Lift it up and off so it doesn't snap into place. Do the same to the other side. Let's also remove the license plate bracket here. You can just pry it away and squeeze it in at the top. All right. Now you can pull the bumper away, separate the two, and there is your air dam. Now let's reinstall the air dam. So tilt the bumper forward, put the bumper over this. There we go. And you want to line up these two tabs here. They're very helpful when it comes to reinstalling it, because as soon as those lock in, you know you're centered and lined up. Now it does have a little bit of an adjustment to it, but for the most part, everything should line up. At this point, let's put in all the mounting hardware. You want to make sure it starts in by hand so that you don't cross thread it. You want this to be nice and secure. I'm going to start by tightening up the bolt that is behind the fog lights, because it's harder to reach, and I want to make sure that that one is almost bottomed out and 100% lined up. I know you can't see it. I honestly can't either. It's tucked up underneath there, but you can get to it with a wrench. If you have a ratcheting wrench, that is the best, because you don't have to go back and forth on it. Anyway, that's nice and snug. I'm going to do the other side, and I'll just grab my air ratchet and go along the entire bumper. All right. Let's put the license plate bracket back in, slide it up into place here, make sure it clips nice and secure, and you can take these tabs and hook them in. That's in. And when it comes to the bumper pads, you just line them up and press them in. That's it. And of course you want to do the same to the other side. If these don't stay securely locked in place because all the tabs are broken, replace them. You don't want this to fall off on the road. Now pick up the bumper and slide it over. It has to hook into the top here. So come in at an angle, lift it up, make sure the tow hooks slide through. There we go. Now it's in. Make sure it lines up. Obviously it's not going to stay. Be very careful because it can fall at this point technically, so make sure it's somewhat secured in here, and let's quickly put some of the bolts in. Now very carefully get underneath the truck and let's bolt up the bumper as soon as possible so that we spend the least amount of time with it not completely secured. It's a good idea to have someone help you with this and have them lift up on the bumper while you try to line up this first bolt. I think that's started. I'm going to grab my tool and try to thread it in a little more. Don't tighten any of them until they're all in. Yeah, that one's definitely in, and I just tightened it all the way. So I'm going to back it off a couple turns. Okay, perfect. I want this to still be able to move around. Having said that, let's get the top one in. And on the outer part of this bracket, let's get this other bracket over it and start the bolt in. All right, that one's started. Okay, don't tighten it all the way, of course. Get this lower part bolted in. Now I have all 4 10mm bolts started, and I know that everything is lined up. I actually started the other side bracket as well, all 4 of them. Wasn't going to show you that because it's the same exact thing. So once you have all of them lined up, move the bumper in any position it needs to be perfectly lined up with the bolts in. Mine already is. It's sitting exactly where it needs to be. So in no particular order, tighten all the bolts. And let's do the other side. This is the one where I had to replace the bolt with another regular bolt and a nut on the other side. I chose to put the bolt through the back side and the nut on the front side. If you have to replace any hardware like I did, just make sure it's the same grade and the same size. Let's put this shield back here. Get all the push clips back into the bumper. There we go. And now on both sides of the truck, plug in the fog light bulbs if you had fog lights. Make sure that connector clicks, and there you have it. Bumper bracket is replaced.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.